Well, welcome to Uncut and Unfiltered Cosmetology Insights with Nathan Shaw, where we help aspiring and current beauty professionals master the business and craft of cosmetology so that they can build successful, long lasting careers. Your guide is Nathan Shaw, a dedicated educator and working man's hairdresser who successfully built his schools from his earnings from behind the chair. And he generously shares his deep industry experience to challenge misconceptions and teach you the crucial skills needed to manage your career. I'm your host, Andy Traub, and today we're going to dive deep into one of the most critical topics for anyone building a lasting career in beauty. And this is part of our series called What I'd Tell My Younger Self. So I've got some gray. Nathan, you got a little bit of gray. It's okay if I say that if people aren't seeing this on YouTube. We got a little, I used to get my hair cut and the gray would go away, and now it doesn't go away. It's locked in. So, but this is the benefit of your experience. You're going to speak to your younger self. And the idea that we're going to really focus in on today is that in this industry, to be truly successful, you need to focus not just on beauty skills, but on business skills. So tell me, how quickly in your career, Nathan, did you figure out, wait a minute, I need to get better at the business stuff?
I feel very fortunate that I think I learned that pretty early on. Part of that is I had an older brother that was in the hair business before me,
Oh, nice.
and he's kind of the one that talked me into the industry, so to speak, and helped me cut my teeth in the industry. But one of the things that he really pointed out when I was starting out was, you get out of school and you feel by the time you're done with school, you're ready to be done. And you're like, okay, I'm competent. But then you get into a salon in a real world environment, and suddenly all the nagging thoughts and the doubts start creeping in of like, how good am I really? I'm just barely out of school. Can I really do this as a professional?
Yeah.
But he really pointed out, while I'm building those skills, the most important part is just making that connection with people and understanding the business side of it. Because if you do that, you're gonna much further along than just focusing on your skills.
Well, many aspiring cosmetologists, and I would say a lot of people who are struggling in their current career, they really focus a lot on their artistic skill because that's probably the reason they got into it, is they were good at cutting or coloring or styling or nails or whatever it might be. That's their motivation probably was not on day one of cosmetology school. I'm here to get rich because I'm so good with money and I decided this is the career I'm going to follow, right? It was the I love this field. This I love this business, but they don't really spend very much time on the business part of the business. So they really think that success is mostly dependent on being technically good or technically excellent. And the problem that you've talked about with me personally, and also a little bit on the show, is a lot of schools lack business education. So, were you able to get that education? And if you weren't, or are people getting it today, or is it still lacking?
I think in a lot of places it's still lacking, but it's definitely more readily available, and it's something that we try to ensure that we give to the students that go to our schools, for example. But yeah, it wasn't a big focus for sure when I was in school, and I think there's a lot of schools out there that still don't make it enough of a focus.
Right. I mean, frankly, your income, the business side of the business is your oxygen,
Yeah.
right? You have to have your dollars in a row. You've got to pay your booth rental, or you don't have a booth anymore. You got to be able to afford equipment, or you can't cut. You've got to be able to pay your taxes, or the tax man cometh, right? I mean, you've got to do those things. So, what, in your opinion, are the most important business skills that that cosmetology anyone in cosmetology needs to have? What are the basic things that you have to understand about your business as a person in this business?
There's a couple that really come to mind. The first one is, first of all, we're in a customer service business. We like a lot of people in this industry, like they're artists, and there's this sometimes glorified, oh, I'm so artistic, people should just love me because of how great my art is, right?
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, the people that have to wear your work, their opinion is what matters about it, right? And their experience with you getting that service done. So at the end of the day, it's really about pleasing people and giving them the desired result that they want. And sometimes you do have those great customers, or if you're very artistic, the customers that come in and let you have carte blanche to just be like, hey, do what you want, do what you think would make me look good. But most people come in with an idea of what they want, and being able to execute that and make them happy with the result is really a key. I'd say the second part of that is really understanding what your KPIs or your key performance indicators are. Like, are you measuring the parts of your business that are actually going to show you whether you're growing long term, or are you just hoping that there's money left over, at the end of the week when you pay your booth rent if you're independent, or if you're not, that, you hope your check's big enough to cover your bills when it comes in.
Yeah. So let's dive a little deeper into that. I think that there are, again, I think the part of the difficult part of this is that when you come into it for the art, the business feels like it just, like, you could do the art for 8 hours a day, but if you do the business for 30 minutes, you're just totally sucked dry. It's like, it's soul sucking for a lot of people. They're like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. Right. But let's go to the very beginning and just say, like, if you said KPI, define a KPI. Like, what is that? What does KPI stand for?
Well, KPI stands for key performance indicators, and they're literally a few metrics you'd use in any business. Every business has them, but they're the metrics you're going to measure to show whether your business is going to be basically profitable, or you're growing as a business, or if you're not going to be profitable or shrinking and going to go out of business. And if you don't measure those things, and they're more leading indicators. What I mean by that is it's not your paycheck at the end of the week. That's a lagging indicator of what you did last week. There are things you can look at that, like, hey, if I turn these knobs on my business, I can increase my income.
Right. So leading indicator versus lagging. Leading is, if I do these things, this is the result I will get.
Yep.
A lagging indicator is, oh, I on those things happened. Now I'm seeing my profits on the back end.
Correct.
Right. So if you have, let's actually look at these different areas or topics to master. The first is just financial literacy, and that's understanding how to manage money. Now, where do you think most people who go through your schools, most of them are not going out and starting their own business. Most of them are going to work somewhere, correct?
Correct. Most of the time, yes, they start somewhere else.
Right. So understanding and managing money from financial literacy early in your career is simply, from my perspective, and you can tell me where this is short or correct, is, don't, from what you're making regularly, don't spend more than you make. Right. Yeah. There's that piece of it. Right. Yeah. Okay. That's the foundation of financial literacy, is avoid debt as much as you possibly can. Because debt is, with interest, is your money's costing you more money. And that's where we get in trouble. Right. And it doesn't work for anyone else other than the government to print more money. If you're listening to this, you can't print more money. The government can. You're not the government. Okay. So you have to understand how to really, truly manage. But another more nuanced part of that is taxes and insurance. Help people realize this is very important, and it's very basic for some people, but also a lot of people come to this as a shock, because some people, this is their first, job of this type. If you come out and you're working somewhere, are you still likely to get a 1099 and you have to pay your self-employment taxes, or just give a quick, 60, 90-second overview on how you teach people to look at their taxes?
So, I mean, that's a great question. And I think at the end of the day, and that's one of the things we talk about, is like, you've got to decide what's the best work environment for you. And how to start out. If you go and you are an employee of another at a salon where you're literally an employee based, you're going to get a W-2. They're going to put out your taxes. If you don't want to deal with the business at all, that's the best route, because at the end of the day, you have a salon owner or someone else is going to take care of that. But so many go into becoming booth renters or independent contractors, and they have to understand that, like, for every bit of revenue they make, there's taxes due. And most of them don't know that, like, when you mentioned self-employment tax, when you have your taxes taken out of a paycheck, if you're an employee, a lot of people don't realize that their employer matches that same amount, and you're responsible.
Yeah, I mean, to put it in a more simple way, if you have to pay, your employer is paying part of your tax bill for you. The employer is not just paying you; they're paying part of your taxes. And so when you no longer have the employer and you are the employer, you are still responsible for that tax, but now you're paying sort of both sides of it. And you generally just don't see that on your paycheck, even your W-2. You don't see what the employer paid on your behalf.
Exactly.
And so, and these are things that you can't really get around. So you just have to be ready to say, well, hey, I'm going to work on my own. And well, your taxes are going to be different, right? Your taxes are going to be different. And yes, you can deduct things maybe you couldn't before, and there might be some benefits. But just understand first and foremost, like your tax situation is going to change. It doesn't mean you shouldn't go do your own thing, right?
Right.
Because your growth opportunities are generally going to be much higher when you're working for yourself. Uh, your pricing can fluctuate, i.e., go up a lot faster when you work for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But there's this other part too about insurance. When people are looking to get in the industry, what sort of insurance concerns they need to be covering and prepared for?
The big one is you've got to have some type of general liability, and it has to be specific to your profession, right? So if you're offering just hair services, you need to make sure that your insurance agent knows what services you offer. You need to let them know all the services you offer. But there's different risks associated with some of the chemicals we use in this industry. And if you don't have insurance and you're an independent contractor, and heaven forbid you have something go wrong, that's gonna put you in a world of hurt legally.
Yeah, and
And
let's be really blunt. I mean, I think if you're working on someone's head, and your eyes are part of that, and the chemical gets down, and someone gets blinded. I mean, we're just going to go there.
yeah,
If you're liable for that, and you have no one to protect you, that's what insurance is. It's protection, right? You pay
yeah,
a little every month or every year that goes into a big pool, and you hope you never have to use it. But if you have to, it's there, right? And so if you're liable for $300,000 of someone's medical bills, you don't have that money, which is why you have insurance, right? I don't have enough money to buy a brand new car if I total my car tomorrow. That's why I have car insurance, and it's required by law. But you need to have that in place, right?
yeah. Well,
Talk
and
about this. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I said it's a very real concern. I think sometimes we talk about something like this, and people think, "Oh yeah, yeah, it's not a big deal." I've been an expert witness on a couple of
Really?
legal cases in our industry
All right.
where.
We want to hear some stories about that. Are you allowed
So
to?
yeah, sure. My
All right. Go ahead.
brother and my brother that got me into the industry has been an expert witness for a bunch of cases, partially because he started his own color line. He's got a great knowledge of chemistry, and he has the background of being a hairstylist. But there's way more than people think. You'll have basically chemical burns if you misuse hair color products, and you've had situations where people they get third-degree chemical burns on their head, where it's like they
100%.
have to have a skin graft, they have to have a hair
Oh,
transplant, and it never looks the same, right? And
sure.
it disfigures people. My brother he was an expert witness on a case where someone was doing lash extensions, which is kind of a newer big craze the last few years. And I can't remember if it was the remover for the glue on the lashes or the glue itself. I'd have to check with him, but the person doing it wasn't real experienced with it, got it in the person's eyes, and now this person, while she's not blind, she will no longer create her own tears, and she has to use eye drops. I believe it's I can't remember if it's every 2 or 4 hours for the rest of her life, including the middle of the night. Like she has to wake up in the middle of the night and reapply eye drops. And so things like that, when they go to court, like those are very hefty settlements. So you better make sure you have insurance, because
Yeah.
while no one wants that to happen to them, it happens. And when my brother was doing this expert witness work, or when I had some brought to me, I was actually kind of amazed how often it does happen.
Wow. Well,
You know,
if you think about, and again, if you feel like, are they trying to scare me? The answer is, for my part, I don't know if you are. I
no,
am. I am. You can be nice,
that's fair.
Nathan. I'm going to be the mean guy because I want to scare you enough to take action,
Yeah,
right? So, because it's that important, if I meet a dad, I've got my kids are 17, 16, and 14. If I meet a dad who's the breadwinner for his family because he's got 3 kids under 5, like I did, I'm going to say, hey, man, do you have life insurance? And he's like, dude,
right.
you've known me for 30 seconds. I'm like, I don't care. Do you have life insurance? If they say no, I'm like, I'm mad at you. That's irresponsible. Like, I know you love your kids and you think you're going to live forever, but you're not. So get life insurance. If you're in this industry, you need to have the right amount of insurance.
Yeah.
because it will give you peace of mind that no one in their right mind would ever intentionally do something to their client. But we're not talking about that. We're saying accidents happen every day, right?
Yep.
I mean, I never want to use my car insurance, but sometimes you have to because stuff happens, right? So take the time to figure that out. And if you go to a school, they should be preparing you for that, right? It is a big deal. And no one ever thinks it's going to be them, but obviously that happens all the time because millions of people today got cosmetology services and millions are tomorrow. So out of the millions, stuff's going to happen, right? I want to ask you about when it comes to business management and understanding the business side of things. We're going to do a big switch here. People are going to like this one. This will be more fun to talk about. Is
Eric.
pricing.
Yeah.
All right. I walked by, I've never told you this story, but I walked by a salon here in Tennessee, downtown Franklin, and I saw this chart. It was one of those sandwich boards, they call them. You know, it's like just sits out,
Yeah.
you know, it sets out in front of the sidewalk. And it was like, it was 5 names and it said haircuts, whatever styles, whatever. And it had one name and it was like $65. Had another name and it was $85. And it went all the way to the top and it was like Armando or something like that. And his was 300. And then I read the sign and I looked up at the business and guess what the business is called? Armando's, right? Like, oh, he was the guy, right? You know? And so, you can price a lot of different ways, right? A lot of different amounts. Let's talk about if you want to grow your business, just give us as long as you want to give us some thoughts, some perspectives on pricing. Because I think if everybody could go in and say, I charge $300, they would,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So talk us through pricing and sort of the nuance of it, and how are you able to eventually charge more?
Yeah. Well, I think it's funny. There's a pretty common way, I think, in our industry, people come up with their pricing the first time, right? And they
Okay, tell
tend,
us about that.
yeah, they tend to shop the other local salons, right? And kind of
Okay.
like call and get prices. And then they're like, okay, do I want to be somewhere in the middle? Do I think I deserve to be on the high end? Am I starting out? Need to be on the low end? And they set a price, kind of
Okay.
with no thought to whether that price is going to make them the income they need, if it's going to be profitable to cover their overhead for how long it takes them to do said service at that price, for how many hours they're available to work. And so they really don't often do the math, the correct math, and the basically the due diligence on the data of what they need to charge to be successful.
Uh-huh.
And that's the common way.
Right. Right. I mean, I don't want to be flippant about this, but it's essentially like saying, well, if I literally pick up the phone and I call someone and I say, how much money do you need to live? And they're like, I need $40,000. And I go, okay, great. I'm going to go make 45,000. Well, I didn't know that they were, 21 and live with their parents. Right. I got
Right.
3 kids at home, and a mortgage, and I don't live with my parents. So I need a different amount. So your point is to make your starting point, how much do you want? Not how much
Yeah.
is someone else doing, right?
Yeah.
So tell me, because I'm the skeptic right now, I'm going to say, that sounds great, Nathan, but like, aren't people going to shop around? If I'm $10 more or $20 more or $30 more, then like, why would people come to me?
Yeah. No, and I think people will shop around, and that goes back to even doing the research on the type of client you want, right? Because there's clients that are definitely going to shop for price; they want the best price, and there's clients that are going to happily pay more, but they want the experience and sometimes the prestige of the salon you have, and so that's something that's got to be taken into account as well. Is like, you can have 2 hairstylists doing very, very similar quality of work, and one's charging $20 for a haircut, and someone else, to your point, is charging $300 or $400 for the same quality of work of a haircut. But I guarantee you, the difference of environment, the difference in service that they're getting is going to be drastically different. And that's the other part that comes into pricing, is knowing where you are in the market and what quality of service you're providing that guest.
Yeah. Let me ask a really specific question. Give me a couple. Can you give me a couple examples of ways to, like, if I say, okay, great, every time someone comes in who's over 21, I'm going to offer them champagne, but that costs me $40 every time I do that. and I charge $40 more, I'm not making any more money because it cost me, right? $40. So my question is, what are some things that people can do or should do or do that can improve the experience without costing them what the difference would be in their pricing?
The things that you could do that really don't cost you anything in overhead is really going to be the quality of care, individualized to each guest, right? And it may be, I don't want to say it's simple, but it might just be the quality of the shampoo if you're a hairstylist, right? Are you giving them a great shampoo experience where they feel like they're getting a massage, right? They're getting a head
Mm-hmm.
massage, part of the deal. Um, is the quality of care you have in helping them pick the right products for their hair type and the way they style their hair? Are you actually putting the effort in to train them not just on the products they need, but how to use them, the proper amount to use? There's so many people that can do the skill, cut the hair, but don't take the
Right.
time to really educate their guests. And that's one of the biggest things that guests and clients want is they want to be educated. They want to understand what's best
Yeah.
for them, whether it's hair, skin, nails, whatever that is. So
Yeah.
really, it's the quality of that experience you make for the guest and what else you offer them.
Boy, there was a nugget there I want to make sure people heard, which I thought of because I think of myself, is the time in my life that I used product the most was when a stylist took the time to show me how to use the product on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And the beautiful thing about that was, first, they use the product, and I'm always like, man, my hair always looks good when you're done with it. And then the next day, it's like, never that's,
Yeah.
and not only does it not look as good, like, it's not even close. It's not like I look half as good. No, it doesn't, right? And they're like, well, let me take the time to show you exactly how, this. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I've been totally doing it wrong. They're
Right.
like, yeah, the stuff in the back, you got to pull that forward in this order. I'm like, oh, I've always trying to push the back to the back. And they're like, no, you got to pull it forward and did it. I'm like, oh, okay, great. Well, guess what? I used more. I used more
The product.
product,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And
And probably
so
had
because I know how to, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I said you probably had a much better result because they trained you how to use it.
Absolutely. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
I think I had the product, but I was like, I don't know how to use it. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so it's like the more photos I take on my phone, the more iCloud storage I need, and more Apple makes money off of me, right? So like they make the
Right.
camera better. I take more photos. I need more iCloud. Like you're creating an atmosphere where you're gonna create demand. Is my point. So I just thought that nugget of like, hey, educate your people on how to use the product. Don't just use the product and go, isn't that great? And they go home and they're like, yeah, but it never looks that good again. So I'm never going to put product in my hair. Right. And like that doesn't help you because you're going to make some money on product, at least you should be. So also this about pricing. And I've been really dying to talk to you about this because I had a really negative experience with pricing once.
Okay.
And let me just explain to it. I'm going to tell you what happened. And then you're going to tell me if I overreacted or if you're like, yeah, they screwed up. All right. So I've been driving about 30 minutes to go get my haircut somewhere, styled, whatever you want to call it. And this guy was great. He was really good. He's young. He's, obviously near Nashville. So he's a musician. Everybody's a musician, right? But he was really good. And I had a good experience. It was me and, him and a bunch of 40-plus-year-old women, and it was fine. And 60-year-old, it was great. And I would just go get my cut, and it was great. And then one time I went in and I got my cut, and I was very regular. Like I was like every time I left, I was making the next appointment. I was very, very regular. And the next time I went, I think it was like 30% more.
Okay.
And I just went, excuse me? And they weren't there. He gave me my cut, and then I went to the desk, and the receptionist said, it'll be this much. And I said, excuse me? And they said, yeah, it's this much. And I go, it's never been that much. Like, that's not a little, that's a lot more, And she's like, yeah, he leveled up. And I said, does leveled up just mean that he gets to charge me more for my haircut? And she looked at me, she goes, yep. And I was kind of being a smart aleck when I asked the question.
Yeah.
I was like, does leveled up just means he gets to charge me more for my haircut? And she goes, yep.
Yeah.
And first of all, I was like, that was not the right answer, young lady. That is not the right answer. She did not understand why I asked the question, and that the answer was not supposed to be yes. But you know what I did? I paid the bill. I did not tip him, and I've never been back.
Yeah. That
So
sounds
tell me
like
if I overreacted or what could be done there?
I don't know that you overreacted. I'm going to be honest. This is one of those things I made mistakes. And earlier in my career, I raised prices, and I did it kind of a bunch of different ways. What I mean by that is I took different approaches, and there were times I didn't really tell people till they showed up. And most of the time, it wasn't a 30% increase; it was very incremental. But
Right.
I found quickly, like, people are expecting, if they've been to you several times, the price is the price, right? So
Yeah.
when you do that, when you do that without communicating that there's going to be a price increase for whatever reason that is, leveling up, inflation, demand, whatever
Sure.
it is, like, people feel taken, they're taken a little bit advantage of by not knowing. It seems a little bit
Hmm.
I don't know if I want to say shady, but it doesn't seem like it's been very upfront in the pricing, right?
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. I think the best things I've seen is, at the end of the day, is you need to give people forewarning that this is coming.
I
Like,
love
whether
that.
it's like,
I think you're absolutely. I think
yeah,
if I would have sat down and he said, "Hey, Andy, just so you know, I've had a price change, and here's how I would do it," and you can tell me your thoughts. Is I would not charge them the new amount that day. I would say, "Hey, Andy, I've had a price change. You've been loyal, even if it's been one time, right? Like
yeah,
this is the second time. I'm not going to apply that to you today, but just going forward, it's going to be this much. And the reason that's happening is because people like you have been really loyal, and I'm so appreciative of that. But I just don't have as much time, and so I'm raising my prices because the demand has become higher. And
correct,
listen, some people will just always go, "No way, I'm not going to pay more." And you're like, "Okay, fine, see ya." Right?
yeah,
I hope you got to believe someone else will sit in your seat and pay. Take your spot and pay more. But I would say if he would have come to me and said, "Hey, man, this is the last time I can do it for 39. Next time it's 54." I probably would have been like, "Well, man, congratulations, that's awesome." And I'll talk to my wife about that. But I hope I can keep coming back. That's good to know. Now, I might extend it by a week or something like that. But yeah,
yeah,
instead it was just nothing. And that's the
yeah.
definition of a definition of a bait and switch is I think I'm getting
Right?
this and I get that. It just felt
Yeah,
that, and it didn't have to. It could have been a 30-second. And the other is, I also love what you said, Nathan. This is super practical. Is like, don't send out an email to all your people and say I'm charging more, because I think when they don't hear it from you and you're in the chair and you're having the experience, they don't hear it the same
mm,
way. They just heard, I raised your bill, suck it up and deal with it. But if you're
yeah,
sitting there and you're having the experience and you can say to them, "Hey, thank you. I'm raising my prices. I hope you stick with me." I think that's going to come across way better
yeah,
than the receptionist saying, "Yep, he leveled up." And I'm like, "Cool. I'm going to level out and I'll see you never." You know what I mean?
right.
So,
No,
yeah,
and
yeah.
and to that point, I found the most successful thing for me when I raised prices was doing it exactly that way. I didn't send mass emails. I've seen people put like a flyer on the mirror, where they cut hair, and the client's looking at, like, hey, starting January 1st, my new price will be this, right? And here's
Right.
and whether it's,
Do you
they
like
say
that?
inflation. I No, that's never been my favorite. I see people do
No,
it.
I like, just tell people, like,
Yeah,
you're going to
I
talk to your client. Like, I don't know how many clients you've ever had that say, "Nathan, don't talk to me, just cut my hair." Maybe there are, that's fine. But like,
well,
you're going
there's
to have a conversation.
well, and that's just it. I always, and this is where you have to keep immaculate notes on which clients you've let know, right? You have to know,
Mm,
so you're not having the same conversation with clients over and over. But I would do it that way. I would literally, when someone would sit in my chair, I'd be like, hey, we'd talk about things. I'd be like, my price, next time I see you will be this. It's going up, and for whatever reason that was. But the point is, telling them in person, it's more personal. They're able to, like, sometimes, like, to your point, congratulate you. Oftentimes,
yeah,
people are happy for you that you're going to be able to charge more and make more money. But at least you're able to have that conversation rather than just be like, there's a blanket email you got showing up, or the bait and switch, to your point, where they show up and it's just suddenly a
ugh,
higher price that you weren't
such a
expecting.
bad feeling.
Yeah.
I was so disappointed because I was like, "Man, that's just a bad move." Like, because listen, people are looking for reasons to be disappointed in stuff. Like, that's just sort of our natural inclination is like, like, if even if it was at the top of their budget already, that's going to push them over,
Yeah.
right? Versus like you come to them and say, "Listen, like in the last 5 years, I think everyone who's in this business should have raised their prices because everything went up,
Yeah.
everything." And if you are saying to your clients, "Hey, Andy, if you hadn't noticed, everything costs more, and and for that reason, I actually do need to raise my prices as well. And I'm sorry that I'm going to be part of that club of things cost more, but my supplies cost more. My
Yeah.
rent's gone up. And so as much as it pains me, and I hope you'll stick with me, but I have to do that, I would be like, yeah, welcome to being in America. Like,
Yeah.
I get that. No, I'm not gonna be like, what? Things cost more, So I do think that whatever the most uncomfortable route is, it's usually the right one, right? And
I
that's
like.
like, man up, woman up, and just look them in the eye and say, Kathy, I appreciate you. You've been loyal. I need to, and here's another nuance, and I hope people will take this and apply it, is don't say I need to raise my prices. Say I need to adjust my pricing because of I've had more demand, or I made the decision to adjust my pricing. Now people know that means up, right?
Yeah.
But when I hear, or someone hears, hey, they've adjusted their pricing, then then that I get what that means. But just say I'm raising my prices sounds bad. It just sounds bad. I would just say I've adjusted my pricing. I've had more demand, and so I'm going to do that. Or things have cost more, or we have a thing within our salon that for the first 2 years you lock in your price. I'm beyond that, and it's called leveling up. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that you know what that means or doesn't know what that means. I was frustrated because this woman said it to me like I should have known what that meant. She said
Right.
he leveled up, and I was like, this is the first salon I've ever been to.
Yeah.
So don't talk to me like I know what that means. You know what I mean? So take the time to explain it to people. I want to wrap up with this, which is, and we'll talk way more about business in future episodes as well. But again, the purpose of today's episode is not just to focus on your skills in beauty, but your skills in business. I want you to give some encouragement to someone right now that's struggling in the finances of their business. I want you to just encourage them, because I think a lot of people in the business feel like, gosh, am I too expensive? So, that's what people aren't coming to me because what is something as it relates to business and the experience that someone's listening to this right now, they're working out, they're at home, they're driving, they're going to go in tomorrow, they're going to stand behind the chair, someone's going to come in. What's something they can do tomorrow that will allow them to eventually raise their prices?
That's a great question. I think the biggest thing kind of goes back to what I talked about, but it's like give added value, right? Go above and beyond. When you go above and beyond, yeah, you can wield your scissors or your clippers, whatever type of haircut you're doing. But like when you go above and beyond, maybe it is an extra scalp massage at the shampoo bowl. Maybe it's just the quality of education you give them and how to duplicate the look at home. Because to your point, I've heard so many guests and clients over the years say, "Oh, my hair never looks as good at home as when you do it," and that's an
Right.
opportunity. That's an opportunity to educate, to train them, to teach them, so that they can continue to have that same feeling that they had when they left your chair. But if you add value to people, they are going to be happy to give you money. I've used this example many times. You look at some of the wealthiest people in the world, and I brought this up, asked a question, what do they have in common one time in a class, and people tend to not like billionaires. I found out real quick by the answers. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But
Right.
my point is, whether it's a Jeff Bezos, right? It's like, well, who in here doesn't use Amazon? Jeff Bezos not
Yeah.
only made himself wealthy, he made a lot of investors wealthy because he added value to our lives by making shopping for things so simple, right?
Yeah.
Bill Gates, Microsoft. How many people use Microsoft tools in their business or online, right?
Sure. Yeah.
But when you add value to people's lives, you will get paid reciprocally. And I think that's the big thing people need to understand.
I want to encourage people, though, listen to what Nathan just said about adding value means it's more than the cut. It's more, and that's the key part. You're like, oh, I'll add value, do a better job at the cut. That's the minimum. Like, I don't want to be a downer, but like, that's the minimum. They're coming for that. That's their expectation. If you just give them a good cut, like, yeah, that's what they paid for, right? The added value is the extra time at the bowl for the head massage. Or, and here's another thing that's really interesting. You have to be careful with this, especially if it's, someone of the other gender or whatever. But I think an added value is if I go in and someone has a great conversation with me, that's added value.
Yeah.
If someone listens to me well, asks questions, remembers something I talked about last time and brings it up, asked about my kid. I mean, that's added value, right? I'm paying for a cut, right? But if I leave and I feel better about, like, man, you seem like a great dad, or boy, that, your wife's lucky to have that, or that's really cool, you did that at work, like, that's added value. And what did that cost you? Nothing.
Nothing.
You're there anyway, you're cutting. So get
Yeah.
better at that chair talk. Make a goal, and this sounds silly, but I think it's an awesome one. I've done this with asking questions. Is I'll have my hand under the table when I'm in a meeting, and I'll have my thumb out, and I'll ask a question. Someone will say something. I'll put my pointer finger out. I'll ask another question, and I'll do that till all 5 fingers are out. I try to ask 5 questions in a row, right? And I think for you at the chair, if you can just ask great questions and you don't go on about the drama in your own life, right? Because they're not
100%.
they're not paying to hear about that. If you can
Yep.
say 5 questions, like, I'm like, man, this was a great conversation. And they didn't say anything. They just kept asking great questions, right? So that's
Yeah.
another way you can add value. Is just, they're like, man, I just love spending time with you. You just seem genuinely interested in my life. And it's like, yeah, because I am. Because I genuinely do care about your life. Oh, yeah, and I want you to come back. And oh, yeah, and I want you to buy some product. And I want you to give me a big tip. Those can all be true at the same time, right?
Yeah, they can be.
So is that manipulation? No, that's just being a professional,
Yep. And I talk a lot about that again with our students, is you have to be engaging, and being engaging doesn't mean you just talk their ear off. It's engaging them. It's letting them talk about themselves. People want to talk about themselves. They want to be heard. And then on top of it, it's being optimistic and being that good energy. I talk about this. You have people in your life that you're drawn to because they're always such a good positive energy. You want to be around it because it's contagious.
Yeah.
I said, and likewise, we know people that are super negative that we try to avoid because it's like, I'm going to be around Eeyore, and that's not what I want either.
Listen, that can be hard, Nathan. This can be difficult. We'll have other episodes where we talk about just this. But the atmosphere of your salon, it's like walking into, I'm old enough to remember when I used to walk into a restaurant and they had smoking, and it's not like, I wonder what that is. No, it's overwhelming. It's toxic. It's just toxic in the air. Well, then that happens in salons. Like, you walk in the room and it's just toxic, and not from the fumes. People will tolerate the fumes. I'm like, I get it. There's stuff in the air, but like the way that people talk can be so toxic, right? And so it's learning and knowing and understanding that you've got to have a non-toxic atmosphere,
Yep. Correct.
So we're going to wrap up. Thanks for your time today, Nathan. And for those who are interested in learning more about this industry, about how to get into it and how to become better in all these different areas, then I encourage you to check out our free resource. It'll be in our show notes. Nathan, as always, thanks for your time.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Thanks, Andy.